Elon Musk sat in a modest, dimly lit room, the kind of room one might find in a budget hotel rather than the sleek offices of Tesla or SpaceX. The hum of an old air conditioner filled the silence intermittently, occasionally punctuated by the faint buzz of a flickering fluorescent light above his head. It was hard to imagine that just a few years ago, the same man had been heralded as a visionary, the kind of mind capable of reshaping humanity's future. Yet here he was, alone, scrolling through messages on an outdated smartphone, realizing that the financial empire he had built seemed to be unraveling at the seams. Elon's eyes, usually so sharp and calculating, now held a touch of vulnerability that the public had rarely seen. The news reports had been cruel, labeling him as someone who had once soared to unimaginable heights only to fall into obscurity, a cautionary tale for those who dreamed too ambitiously. That he picked up the phone again, tapping hesitantly on an app that he normally ignored, the interface flickering as if it too was struggling to stay alive. On the screen, a message blinked insistently, an AI assistant, glowing softly in the dark, waiting to interact. He paused, considering for a moment whether this was a desperate whim or a genuine need for guidance. He had spent decades trusting technology, relying on algorithms, software, and automated systems to run his enterprises, and now, perhaps for the first time, he felt the need to converse with one, not to command it, but to seek counsel. "I need help," he whispered to no one in particular, though the words seemed to linger in the room as though acknowledging a truth he hadn't faced before. With a deep breath, he opened the chat interface, fingers hovering briefly over the keyboard, uncertain how to begin a conversation that would matter. "Hello," he typed slowly, "I'm Elon Musk, and I think I'm broke. I need to talk to you." The words felt strange on the screen, stripped of all grandeur and title, reduced to a simple admission of vulnerability. The AI responded almost immediately, its tone calm, neutral, and non-judgmental. "Hello, Elon. I'm here to listen and help. Can you tell me what's happening?" He exhaled slowly, letting the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. "Everything. It's all gone," he said, though he knew that was an exaggeration. His mind raced through the assets, the companies, the stakes in projects around the world, yet in reality, liquidity issues and miscalculations had left him in a position he couldn't immediately remedy. "Tesla, SpaceX, the ventures I've started, they're suffering. I misjudged markets, I mismanaged timing, and now I'm staring at a reality I never imagined." The AI responded thoughtfully. "It's not uncommon for even the most brilliant minds to face financial difficulty. What matters is how you respond now. Can we start by assessing your current situation objectively?" Elon nodded to himself, though there was no one to see it. "Yes," he typed, fingers moving more decisively. He began to list his assets, his debts, his obligations. Numbers that once seemed abstract now felt concrete, heavy, almost suffocating. The AI parsed the information with speed and clarity, offering insights that Elon realized he had overlooked in his own analysis. Suggestions came gently but firmly, restructuring debts, focusing on cash flow, leveraging intellectual property rather than liquid assets, reconnecting with former collaborators. As the conversation continued, Elon began to feel a strange sense of relief. For the first time in years, he was not presenting a vision to investors, not pitching a revolutionary concept, not trying to impress or dazzle. He was simply communicating, simply analyzing, simply planning. The AI offered scenarios, projections, and strategies that allowed him to see a path forward, not one paved with guaranteed success, but one that could restore some stability and dignity. He paused mid-conversation and leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling as if seeking some cosmic insight. Memories of past triumphs and failures flashed across his mind, first the days of coding software in South Africa, then the sleepless nights at PayPal, the launches and setbacks at SpaceX. The relentless innovation at Tesla, the wild ambitions of Neuralink, and even the dream of colonizing Mars. Each memory carried weight, a mixture of pride, regret, and hope. The AI's presence seemed almost comforting, a steady voice in a storm he had never anticipated facing in such personal terms. Hours passed as they spoke, strategies slowly taking shape like a map unfolding before him. Elon realized that being broke was not the end, it was a momentary pause, an interruption in a life defined by relentless motion and experimentation. He began drafting emails, contacting partners, rethinking ventures that could generate revenue, and even contemplating philanthropic endeavors that could rebuild his reputation while providing real-world impact. The AI offered careful guidance, posing questions that forced him to consider options he might have dismissed out of pride or fear. By the time the early morning light filtered through the blinds, Elon Musk was still sitting in the modest room, but something had changed. The weight of hopelessness had lifted slightly, replaced by cautious optimism. He realized that even without vast fortunes at his disposal, he retained what had always defined him: vision, intelligence, and an unyielding determination to act. The AI's voice, silent yet present through text, had helped him organize his thoughts, prioritize actions, and confront realities without panic or denial. He looked at the phone again and typed a simple message: "Thank you." The words felt inadequate but true. In that quiet, unremarkable room, Elon Musk had faced a new challenge, one unlike any he had encountered before, and for the first time, he felt that he was not alone. The future was uncertain, as it always had been, but he had a plan, a structure, and most importantly, a renewed sense of purpose. And perhaps, in a world that had expected him to be invincible, there was something profoundly human and inspiring about starting over with nothing but intellect, resolve, and the willingness to seek guidance. The hum of the air conditioner continued, and Elon leaned back, eyes closing briefly. There were obstacles ahead, undoubtedly monumental ones, but he had faced worse. The world might think he was broke, but in reality, he was merely entering a new phase, one that demanded creativity, humility, and relentless action. The first step had been the hardest, admitting the problem, reaching out, and accepting help. From here, the path could be reconstructed, brick by brick, idea by idea. And as he sat in that small, dimly lit room, Elon Musk knew that even in moments of apparent collapse, resilience, ingenuity, and a willingness to adapt could reignite the trajectory of a life that had never been defined by comfort or ease. The morning light grew stronger, spilling across the sparse furniture and highlighting the cracks in the walls that had gone unnoticed before. Elon Musk stretched, feeling muscles stiff from sitting so long, and glanced at the phone again. The AI's screen was still open, waiting patiently for the next message. He realized that this moment, this quiet, unassuming conversation, was unlike any he had ever experienced. For decades, he had been surrounded by teams, advisors, investors, and media attention, all clamoring for direction or validation. But this was different. Here, he could be just Elon, stripped of public persona, stripped of expectation, stripped of performance. He began typing again, almost meditatively, outlining a plan. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't the stuff of headlines. It was basic, almost painfully simple. Cut unnecessary expenditures, liquidate non-essential assets, leverage intellectual property, reach out to strategic partners, and focus on projects that could generate tangible revenue in the short term. The AI parsed each line, reorganizing them into logical steps, highlighting risks, and suggesting contingencies. It was methodical, efficient, and, oddly enough, comforting. Elon realized that he had been so accustomed to chasing grand visions that he had neglected the basics: financial discipline, operational clarity, and strategic focus. As the hours passed, he began to draft messages to former colleagues and partners. The first few were difficult. He had never been one to admit vulnerability, and now he was asking for trust, collaboration, and patience. He explained his situation candidly, acknowledging mistakes while emphasizing the steps he was taking to rectify them. Some responses were supportive, others cautious, and a few skeptical. Each reply, however, provided insight into how he might approach the next stage of recovery. Patience, he realized, would be just as important as speed. Elon paused to reflect on his public image. The media had already painted him as a fallen mogul, the headlines mocking his misfortune. But perhaps, he thought, this could be reframed. People loved a comeback story, they admired resilience. He began drafting a personal message to the public, a careful balance of humility and determination, acknowledging challenges without descending into defeatism. He would not ask for sympathy, nor would he beg for support. Instead, he would invite others to witness the process of rebuilding, to see that even the seemingly invincible could face setbacks and still persevere. Lunch came and went unnoticed. Elon was too absorbed in planning, calculating, and communicating. He scrolled through financial data, analyzing market trends and emerging technologies that could provide opportunities. Renewable energy, space logistics, and neurotechnology, each field held potential, but he realized he needed to focus on what was realistic in the short term. Ambition was important, but survival required pragmatism. The AI suggested prioritizing projects that combined existing assets with high-demand markets. Tesla's energy storage technology, for example, could be leveraged for commercial contracts, while some of SpaceX's satellite technology could be adapted for government partnerships. Each idea sparked others, creating a chain reaction of possibilities that energized him. By mid-afternoon, Elon felt a renewed sense of momentum. The room no longer felt like a prison, it was a workshop of ideas. A laboratory for recovery. He mapped out a timeline, breaking tasks into daily, weekly, and monthly goals. Small victories, he realized, would build confidence and generate tangible progress. He began to understand that being broke wasn't an end, it was a reset, an opportunity to rebuild with greater awareness, discipline, and humility. The AI's guidance was invaluable, not because it provided magic solutions, but because it offered clarity, structure, and perspective. Evening approached, and the room darkened as the sun dipped below the horizon. Elon leaned back in his chair, exhausted but alert. He reflected on the human dimension of this experience. For decades, he had been driven by ideas, technology, and vision, often at the expense of personal connection. Now, he realized, he needed to balance intellect with empathy, ambition with patience, and strategy with adaptability. He thought of his team members, collaborators, and even rivals, not as obstacles or assets, but as fellow participants in a complex, interconnected system. Rebuilding wouldn't just be about money, it would be about relationships, trust, and credibility. That night, he drafted the final emails of the day, each one carefully worded, each one a small step toward reconnection and collaboration. The AI suggested phrasing that was honest but confident, conciliatory but assertive. Elon read the messages aloud. Listening to the cadence and tone, realizing that he was learning a new kind of leadership, one rooted not in dominance or spectacle, but in authenticity, clarity, and strategic patience. Before going to bed, Elon took a long moment to reflect. He had started the day feeling hopeless, isolated, and overwhelmed. Now, he felt a cautious sense of possibility. He wasn't rich, at least not in liquid assets, but he had knowledge, vision, and experience. He had a plan, a support system in the form of technology, and a renewed understanding of human dynamics. The future remained uncertain, as it always had, but he was no longer paralyzed by fear or ego. He had begun the work of recovery, brick by brick. Decision by decision, conversation by conversation, as he finally lay down to rest, Elon Musk felt a subtle but powerful shift. This wasn't just about financial recovery, it was about personal growth, resilience, and the rediscovery of purpose. The AI's final message lingered on the screen: tomorrow is another opportunity to act. You are not alone. Progress begins with clarity and persistence. Elon smiled faintly, realizing that, for the first time in a long while, he believed it was true. The next morning, Elon woke earlier than usual, the remnants of sleep still heavy on his eyelids. The room was quiet except for the soft buzz of the phone, the AI interface still open, patiently awaiting the next message. He sipped cold water from a bottle beside the bed, feeling a surge of clarity despite the lingering fatigue. Today, he decided, he would start implementing the plan. Analysis and reflection had been important, but now action was required. He began by prioritizing contacts. Reaching out to former Tesla engineers, SpaceX collaborators, and financial advisors, he wrote concise, honest messages. He acknowledged mistakes, expressed determination, and proposed ways to collaborate on immediate revenue-generating projects. Some replies came quickly, tinged with surprise, others took hours. By mid-morning, Elon had scheduled several video calls and a few in-person meetings for the following days. The first obstacle he encountered, however, was subtle but familiar: skepticism. Years of media narratives had created an image of Elon Musk as both visionary and unpredictable, and some recipients hesitated to trust his intentions. Elon reminded himself to remain patient. Trust, he realized, couldn't be demanded. It had to be rebuilt through action. That he turned next to assessing assets that could be leveraged without requiring immediate capital. Patents, software licenses, prototypes, and even dormant projects offered opportunities. The AI suggested prioritizing those with existing market demand and minimal overhead. Elon compiled a list: Tesla's energy storage technology, some SpaceX satellite software, and even intellectual property from Neuralink and the Boring Company that could be adapted for niche commercial applications. By mid-afternoon, he had drafted a comprehensive proposal for a joint venture with a renewable energy firm, combining his technology with their distribution channels. It was small scale, but it was a start, a tangible step toward generating cash flow and regaining credibility. Despite careful planning, setbacks emerged quickly. A potential partner delayed their response, citing internal restructuring, and a few former collaborators expressed hesitancy to re-engage without guarantees. Elon felt the familiar tug of frustration but reminded himself that this was part of the process. Patience, persistence, and adaptability, these would now define his strategy. The AI offered contingency options, alternative partnerships, scaled-down pilot projects, and phased commitments. Elon embraced each suggestion, realizing that flexibility was more valuable than stubborn adherence to a single plan. By evening, he had participated in a long video call with a former SpaceX engineer who had moved on to a government contractor. The conversation was cautiously optimistic. They discussed ways to adapt existing satellite technology for government contracts, including data management and security applications. Elon presented a clear outline of the value proposition, emphasizing efficiency, cost-effectiveness, and innovation. By the end of the call, the engineer expressed tentative interest, contingent on a formal proposal and pilot demonstration. It wasn't a final deal, but it was momentum, a reminder that forward movement, no matter how incremental, was achievable. Dinner was quick and unremarkable, a sandwich eaten at the small table in the corner. Elon reflected on the day, analyzing successes, failures, and areas for improvement. The AI highlighted patterns, his ability to articulate vision remained strong. But follow-through, negotiation finesse, and timing required careful attention. Elon made notes, adjusting the next day's schedule to address these insights. Late that night, Elon drafted a brief public statement, not a press release, not a viral post, but a sincere, straightforward message acknowledging challenges while emphasizing commitment to recovery and innovation. He would not seek attention, he would seek credibility through results. He sent the draft to a small circle of trusted colleagues for feedback. Their responses were cautiously supportive, encouraging him to maintain authenticity and transparency. Elon realized that his reputation, long tied to grandiose announcements and ambitious projections, could now be reshaped through consistent, measurable action. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Elon juggled video calls, proposal drafting, and financial planning, each task reinforcing lessons in patience, communication, and strategic focus. He faced moments of self-doubt, especially when proposals were delayed or rejected, but the AI provided perspective, reminding him that setbacks were temporary and often a source of insight. Slowly, patterns began to emerge. Certain strategies yielded faster responses, some partners were more receptive to small-scale pilot projects, and clarity of communication had a disproportionate impact on trust. 1 week into the process, Elon received a breakthrough. A medium-sized renewable energy firm responded to his proposal, expressing interest in a pilot project integrating Tesla's energy storage technology with their existing solar systems. The terms were modest but fair, allowing for revenue generation, joint branding, and technical collaboration. Elon realized this was the first tangible step in his comeback, a project small enough to manage efficiently but significant enough to demonstrate capability and rebuild credibility. Elon spent the following days preparing for the pilot. He coordinated engineers, oversaw logistics, and refined technical specifications. The AI assisted with project management, creating timelines, assigning priorities, and predicting potential bottlenecks. For the first time in weeks, Elon felt a sense of tangible progress. The project wasn't about grand ambition, it was about execution, reliability, and trust building. Yet it was precisely this grounded focus that renewed his sense of purpose. Throughout this period, Elon also reflected on the personal growth embedded in the experience. He realized that financial instability had forced him to confront vulnerability, humility, and patience, qualities he had long overlooked in the pursuit of vision. Relationships, trust, and credibility became as important as technological innovation. Elon began keeping a journal, noting insights, lessons, and reflections. Creating a record of both strategy and personal evolution, the pilot project launched smoothly, albeit with minor technical adjustments along the way. Initial results were promising, generating positive feedback from the client and modest revenue. Elon shared updates internally and externally, emphasizing collaboration and transparency. Slowly, momentum built. Media attention, while not sensationalized, began to notice the quiet resurgence. Elon Musk was acting decisively, learning from mistakes, and producing results. By the end of the first month, Elon had achieved a delicate but meaningful transformation. He was no longer the broke figure reported in sensational headlines. He was a strategist, a problem solver, and a leader grounded in practicality and authenticity. The AI, ever present, continued to offer guidance, analysis, and perspective, but Elon realized the greatest insight came from experience itself. Progress required consistency, patience, and the willingness to adapt. Elon leaned back one evening, reviewing the pilot project data and the responses from partners. A subtle sense of accomplishment settled over him, not from wealth regained, but from clarity, resilience, and forward motion. The path ahead remained uncertain, full of challenges and potential setbacks, but he had discovered a crucial truth: recovery, like innovation, was a process, not a single event. And in embracing the process, Elon Musk was beginning a comeback that was quieter, steadier, and more sustainable than any headline-grabbing announcement could convey.